The accounting cycle is the process of recording and processing all transactions of a company. It is the accountant's responsibility to know the full accounting cycle from start to finish, because this process restarts itself every beginning of the accounting period. This video will talk about what the accounting cycle is all about. This is Accounting Zero to Hero. We are here to help you understand the fundamental accounting concepts through simplified technical discussions and practical applications of the accounting standards. All of this to help you go from zero to hero. Now let's go back to the video. The accounting cycle is typically depicted as an 8-step process. The first one will be the transactions. This step starts from day 1 of the year up to the last day of the fiscal year. Note that accounting periods do not always start on January 1 and end in December 31, but it is presented this way for illustration purposes only. Transactions encompass everything that might have a financial impact on the business: a sale, on cash and credit, purchase of inventories, debt payoff to the bank, and the number of transactions that you have will depend upon the size and the nature of the business. Once you have identified the transaction in the previous step, you now need to translate them to a format that the accounting system will understand. And that is through the journal entries. We typically use the double entry bookkeeping system to do this, and we made a whole series about this in the description below. For each transaction with a financial impact, a journal entry shall be made, and they're typically stored in chronological order. In the posting process, we use the T accounts or the account ledgers to summarize the impact of the journal entries to the individual accounts. We have made a separate video about the T account and the posting process that we have linked in the description below. The first 3 steps that we have discussed are performed all throughout the year. Every time there is a transaction, you journalize them and you post them. That happens from January 1 to December 31. And now, the following steps 4 to 8, are done only every end of the accounting period, because they represent the summarization concept of accounting. So during the end of the accounting period, we need to summarize all the posted amounts in the account ledgers or T accounts to come up with the net debit or net credit balances of each account. By the end of this process, we'll be able to see the ending balances of each account. For example, how many cash we have by year end or how much do we still owe from the bank. Then, when we summarize all these ending balances into one single table, that is what we call the trial balance. The worksheet portion could be one of the most challenging part in accounting. The trial balance that you prepared is typically transposed to a 10-column accounting worksheet to kickstart the process of preparing the financial statements. In this section, the accountant must ensure that the total debits are equal to the total credits every time. It is called a 10-column worksheet because it is composed of 5 sections, each with a debit and a credit. Although we prepare this in step 5, this worksheet is actually used for steps 6 and 7 as well. The trial balance that we generate from the posting process is not always necessarily complete. This is where the adjusting entries come in. We need to investigate and adjust the following typical items. Number 1, the accruals. Simply speaking, accruals are income or expenses which should be recorded in the period but are typically not recorded in the journals because they have not yet been settled in cash. A deferral, on the other hand, is a payment during the year for an income or expense, but they do not pertain to the period, so they should be taken to the balance sheet instead of being in the income statement as an expense or an income. We also have other corrections. During your investigation of the balances, you may encounter other errors that need to be corrected. We input these adjusting entries in the specific columns in the 10-column worksheet. Once the adjusting entries are completed, we now compute the adjusted trial balance. A future video will be dedicated specifically for the discussion of the accruals and deferrals, so stay tuned for that. In the 10-column worksheet, you will be able to prepare the financial statements, the balance sheet and income statement using the adjusted balances. We can also actually prepare the cash flows using the data we have with the general ledger, but this is not covered by the 10-column worksheet. This 7th step marks the end of the reporting process. Once you have the financial statement figures, you now then have to compile all the data so that you can prepare the notes to the financial statements, but this is not covered again by the 10-column worksheet. In the 10-column worksheet, you only finalize the figures from the trial balance to the adjustments to the adjusted trial balance, and then from the adjusted trial balance, you will forward the figures to the balance sheet and to the income statement. The 8th and final step is actually done after the financial statements are signed and finalized. This normally happens in the beginning of the next accounting period, before the first transaction in the period is journalized. To understand the closing process, you need to understand that the balance sheet accounts are permanent accounts, meaning their balances are carried from one period to another, as long as it's not zero. And income statement accounts are temporary accounts, meaning their ending balances during the period are closed or zeroed out towards the end of the year, and their beginning balances are always zero during day 1 of the year. We typically close them to the retained earnings account. We debit all income statement and credit all expenses, and the net amount is debited or credited to the retained earnings. Interestingly, you will also notice that this net amount is actually equal to your net income. Once the closing process is done, your accounting books are ready for another financial year. So I hope that by now you have a very good overview of the accounting process. If you want to see more accounting content, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell below. See you!